Hello, my fellow Hulk fans. It's Jerry Rasco with you again, and today we are going to continue on with our series of looking at the Incredible Hulk stories from back in the day. Today we're going to be looking at the comic called Tales To Astonish 63, featuring the Hulk and featuring another story with Giant Man and the Wasp. So for those of you who are new to the channel, thank you for jumping on and checking this out with me. I really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. Remember, we're making our big push this year to get to 1,000 subscribers. And when we hit the 1,000 mark, one lucky subscriber, free of charge, is going to win this artwork. That's right, this Incredible Hulk art by yours truly, as well as this amazing Spider-Man piece, also by yours truly. So the idea is to celebrate both of the review series that I do here with the Incredible Hulk and Spider-Man. So all you have to do is click that subscribe button. Again, no proof of purchase, no purchase necessary. Even shipping is free to the lucky subscriber that I pick at random when we get to that 1,000 subscriber mark. So consider subscribing if you haven't. Again, if you're new, thank you. And if you are, you may say, wait, why are we looking at Tales to Astonish? So again, very, very quickly, the Hulk series, the original Incredible Hulk series, was canceled with issue number 6, and the Hulk was moved to this ongoing book, which is, it's not a flip book. A flip book is actually one where it has a front cover on the front and back and 2 stories. This is an issue that's just split in half. So maybe think of it, it's not quite an anthology because it's multiple stories usually. But this is just an ongoing series called Tales to Astonish. The first story is Giant Man and the Wasp, and then the second story is the Incredible Hulk. So that's what we're going to look at. And there's some stuff going on here. There's some interesting stuff. There's some stuff that misses the mark for sure. But we're going to check it out together, and I'm curious to see what you think as well. So without further ado, let's head over and check out the comic together. So this is the comic. This is the cover to Tales to Astonish 63. And as you can see, it's exactly what I said. We've got 2 stories going on here. We have Giant Man and the Wasp, and then we have the Hulk. So this cover is drawn by Jack Kirby, and it has a lot of the kinds of things you're looking for in a Silver Age Jack Kirby comic or illustration. There's very bold line work. There's the hands are very prolific, or not prolific. That's not the right term. They're up front and very forward, both figuratively and literally. So meaning one of the things that Jack Kirby does so well with his characters is use the hands to express, whether that's fists or pointing or whatever. Those hands are usually coming at the reader in different ways to really help set that off, the action and the intensity. And we see that, of course, with the Ant-Man piece up here. With the Hulk, we have the Hulk is apparently on a train fighting some sort of creature as they're passing through an overpass or a tunnel. So we've seen a couple different ways you can split these. We've seen covers split vertically. We've seen covers split horizontally. So when you split the cover horizontally, obviously your proportions are different, right? Now it's going to be wider than it is tall. And so Jack has used a horizontal composition in both of these sections, which is a great way to utilize that space, right? So you have a character like Giant Man. Instead of him standing up tall, was vertical, he's laying down, kind of crashing, looks like through maybe like a supermarket or something like that, reaching out to grab the guy. And his arms are expanded again horizontally. So great use of that space there. Same thing, the Hulk, the train is moving from left to right, and we've got the bridge above. So we have a very, again, horizontal concept. The only problem that I have with the horizontal element is by flattening it out, as opposed to the vertical, I feel like sometimes it loses some of the power. Everything is very squished down. It doesn't help that there's a lot of trade dress. So term trade dress refers to things like the box art, the cover title, the Comic Code Authority, all these blurbs talking about Giant Man and Hulk is fighting a Titan and this other thing down the bottom. So you have less real estate and everything has to be short, but you're dealing with characters that are massive and big and tall. So kind of boxed in just by the nature of these characters. And, in my opinion, I'd say Jack really, you did the best you could with what you were given. The Hulk needs a lot of room, in my opinion, to breathe as a character. You saw my Hulk on an 11x17 really expanding that space to be a big monstrous character. Obviously, Giant Man would be the same way. But you got to do what you got to do. Otherwise, it's a great cover for, early Jack Kirby work. That's really nice. Again, heavy line weight. The only thing I want to point out, this is the second one in a row where we have some weird fists. And I'm going to zoom in on the Hulk's fist here. And so normally when you make a fist, your finger covers your pointer finger and kind of ends right at your middle finger. Here, the Hulk's fist, his thumb is way, way over like this. But you notice how far my thumb has to come across. Whereas the Hulk's thumb is way out, but then it goes all the way across. So it's a very long thumb, let's put it that way. And then the other part is when you make a fist, your fingers curl under. So you're going to see the front part here. I'm not necessarily going to see the nails. Even if I curl it up like this, my nails are still pointing in to my fist. So what we've got here is more of like this. The fingers are down. And then he's doing this kind of with his thumb. Right? Kind of a weird fist. Not very strong. On the other hand, you see kind of the back of the hand. Right? So we see the knuckles. We see the knuckles coming up and then bending over. Even if it's tipped forward, you shouldn't see that thumb at all. Somehow the Hulk has put his thumb on the outside. I don't know that I can even do what he's doing. So yeah, you really shouldn't see that thumb. That's bent in a way that doesn't make sense for a fist. So a little weird. Not sure why. Also, I just noticed this. Hulk's got quite the little like side part going on there, a little comb over action maybe or something. I know they're on a train. You'd think maybe the wind would be blowing his hair that way, right? The direction, the opposite direction the train is going. He's got this groovy little comb over going on. Again, it is what it is. What it lacks in those subtle details, it makes up for in the action and the energy. We're going to skip through the Giant Man story because that's not why we're here today. We are here to talk about the Hulk. So we open up with a splash page, which is pretty good. I should say this as I always do. This is a scanned PDF copy of this book. So Marvel in 2007 found old copies and actually scanned each and every one of them so that we have a nice, clean representation of exactly how this book looked when it came off the printing presses. Of course, minus the aging. You're going to see some wrinkles, some folds. You see the staples kind of coming apart. It is an old book, even by 2007. So, but you get all of the original coloring, all of the original lettering, all of the original ads. So you really get the feel of what this was like, as opposed to maybe a more modern reprint where a lot of times they'll edit or make changes. So the art team, the creative team is still the same. Stan Lee is still writing the story. Steve Ditko is the penciler. And then George Russo's, going by the name George Bell, is the inker. So we open on a nice splash page introducing the leader. So we saw that. If you didn't see the previous episode, check that out in the playlist. But it ended with the leader who had sent the chameleon to try to steal secrets from the Gamma base, or the air base, where I guess it's not considered the Gamma base yet, where Dr. Banner works. And his plan was thwarted. And so now the leader needs another plan. And he was shown he was working on this thing he called his humanoid. And now his humanoid is ready and we can see what it is. I always love a splash page. It jumps us into the story. That's great. There's no waste, especially when you only have half the pages, right? So normal story would be twice as long. You can work your way into it. Here, we have to jump into it immediately. Also, I do want to point this out. I made a note here. Because there's so much story packed into all of like 13 pages, that means there are a ton of small panels. I mean, you can see right here immediately off to the side, we're into a 9-panel grid. So again, for anybody who's not familiar with how comics are made, comics are drawn on an 11 by 17 piece of paper, and inside of that 11 by 17, the actual area where the art is created is 10 1/4 by 15 inches. So you have your inch on the top and bottom. That's your big white border there. And then you've got a little bit of a border between the pages and on the edge. So if you have a little over 10 inches by 15 inches and you're going to put 9 panels in here, you're going to divide this up. That means these are about 3 inches wide and a little less than 5 inches tall each. So a little less than 3 by 5. So think about, a 3 by 5. It's the kind of thing we used to have, people used to put in their wallets, a little 3 by 5 photo, right, of your family, your, children, whoever. So a 3 by 5 photo is pretty small. And this is exactly, and we have 9 of them. So because they're so small, that means the drawings are really small, which means the details are really small. And when you have somebody else inking, some of those details get lost in that job. And that's what we see throughout this issue. Real quick, I want to come back to the splash page. I like the humanoid. I think it's kind of a funky design. We don't really know what it is yet. We'll find out. But it's this thing in this tube. The weird orange spots, the design. It's obviously, as he says, a humanoid figure. So 2 arms, 2 legs, some sort of a head, but no face. The arms are much longer than the legs. Kind of just interesting and, a little bit different. So I applaud the creativity. Now, the thing I didn't like about this, that I thought I'd like to see differently. So you have the humanoid in his tank. You have the leader sitting in a chair saying he's ready. And then as we go to the page, he's taking off this helmet, and now we get his origin story. He's reminiscing about how things started. In my opinion, what I would like to see is bigger figures. Whenever you have a splash page like this, I'd take this, a Titan Rides the Train title, take it down 10%, 20% even. It's still plenty big. Let's see. You could even have the humanoid figure in the glass behind, but I want to see the leader. Maybe he's getting... So my suggestion was have him standing from the seat here and beginning to take his helmet off here, and then you jump, boom, right into the reminiscing. Here, he's sitting, so he's very placid. It's very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very calm. There's no motion or action or energy. It's just there. But just a simple motion of having him remove that helmet, we can see that's a big deal here because there's going to be a reveal of what the leader really looks like. Why don't we start with that here as he's walking towards us? That also helps develop more depth. For splash page, there's not a lot of depth because there's only subtle overlapping. So there's certain ways that you can create depth in a 2-dimensional space. One of the best ways to do it is overlapping. So if I have something here and I have something here and the two edges are overlapping, your brain tells you this is in front, this is behind. The other way to do that, you can see, is the size difference. These are 2 hands. One is bigger, in your view, one is smaller. That's because now we know which one is in front. The bigger one is in front, the smaller one is behind. There's also a lot of other subtle things you can do. Things that are higher up on the horizon or further away from us. As the curvature of the Earth goes away, it rises and we see things far away. There's also things you can do with color in terms of the blue. The more blue something, or the more space there is between your eyes and something, there's more atmosphere in between, and the light makes it blue. It's the reason the sky is blue. And so as things go away, they begin to turn blue. And then, of course, when it comes to art like this and drawing, you can also change the line weight. So things that are up close are going to have a big, heavy line weight. Things that are further away are going to have very thin pencil lines. Here, we don't have a deep enough space to add the color to make things blue as they go further. We also don't have enough space because there's a ton of all this trade dress and writing to have a lot of depth to show things way up in the space and way down low in the space. So we have to kind of keep everything in the middle, so we can't use that. So really the best thing we can do is, and then there's also no scale because we don't know what this machine is. This machine could be big, it could be little. There's no frame of reference for us to recognize. So the only way to really show depth is overlapping. And there's only a little bit. Obviously, the leader overlaps the chair. We know he's sitting in the chair. And then he's in front of this tube or whatever that connects to the tank that his humanoid is in. So that's good. That's good overlapping. There's a little bit here of the machine overlapping his chair. What I would like to see then is maybe again, you have him removed from the chair. So he's overlapping slightly in front of the humanoid. He's starting to take his helmet off. Then you have the machine in front framing him as well. And now you have a foreground, which is what's closest, a middle ground, which is him in the middle, and then a background, which is the humanoid in the tank behind him. So that's a way to create even more depth and space, but you're still using basically a very similar composition, the same layout, if you will, or certainly the same space in a splash page. So that's a way that you could do it that would bring a lot of depth, space, three-dimensionality to this splash page that it's kind of missing today. We go right into your classic character origin story. Right, so I remember what happened. I was just a basic guy. So real quick, if if you're not familiar with the leader is just a regular, like basically over the years they've said he's a janitor at times. I think right now they say he's a laborer, and he was working in a chemical plant cleaning up, and there was an explosion that exposed him to a bunch of gamma rays, and it immediately started making him smarter, until he transformed into the leader. So we see how gamma rays, this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first other character besides the Hulk that's shown that gamma rays can affect people. And it's very interesting. I don't know how much, I'm assuming this was planned. I know we go back and look at things and we can kind of read into, like, what did Stan really plan this? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But you have Bruce Banner, a very smart super scientist, right? He gets exposed to gamma radiation, and now that manifests itself in a brutish, incredibly strong physical transformation, right? So it's the opposite. Same here. This guy is, I think he says, like, I never finished high school, but all of a sudden, like, I'm a genius. And so gamma seems to bring out the opposite in people that it mutates. So if you're super smart, it's going to increase your physicality. If you're already physical but not as intelligent, maybe it would increase your intelligence. So very interesting that way. There's also good camera angles here. We have, the explosion. This is nice hatching on the explosion to show that energy passing through him. I like the down shot in the library to show the books, the table. He's reading, he's digging into all kinds of stuff, and then he begins to transform. And as we turn the page, we see the transformation here. He's turned into a green-skinned egghead. But I'm glad that the reveal was on the page turn. Too many times we see that happen where this is a big deal. We don't know. What does the leader look like? We haven't seen him yet. And now, boom, we see what he looks like. So great reveal on the page turn. Very good idea there. So he is going to, he was responsible for everything that's been going on in this part of the story here in terms of the Tales to Astonish stories that we've been looking at. There was an armor that was stolen. The Chameleon then was a follow-up to try to figure out what happened and steal more stuff. He failed, and so now the leader is going to send in this thing that he's created, and so the leader has been behind stuff. So we find that he's been working in the background for a while. Nice little cleanup of a dangling plot thread, which was in the last issue there was an explosion. We don't know what happened to the Chameleon. Well, we see that it kind of buried him in rubble. He was protected and hidden, and so he was able to escape kind of the next day and make his report to the leader. I did find this interesting. I don't like Talbot, Major Talbot. I always want to say Ned Talbot. It's Glenn Talbot. I don't like Glenn Talbot. You're not supposed to like him. He comes on board. He's smarmy. He doesn't like Banner right away. He's making moves on Betty. Like, you're not supposed to like the guy. Interesting that he is visually reminiscent of the leader. They both have kind of big heads, widow's peak, sort of receding hairlines, the little pencil mustache. It's obviously they're not the same person, but I find it interesting that there's visual connections between the two. So whether that's planned or it's just maybe that's the general description of a guy you're not supposed to like, but that's I found that interesting. I made that excuse me, I made a note for myself there and then on that piece. Oh, real quick, one more thing. So the Chameleon pops up. Of course, he always has a mask to cover himself. That's how this is how he looks all the time, this sort of featureless mask, and then he wears masks. I love the way that Steve Ditko draws people pulling these masks off, right? It's not like Mission Impossible where it peels off. When you see Spider-Man pulling his mask off, when the way Steve Ditko draws it, Chameleon pulling this, they grab the top and sort of pull it, and you can see it sort of stretching off the head. And you imagine as it gets to the end, it's going to go like pulling a balloon off something. And it's just a way that he's done it. It's something I've noticed now in 2 different comics, and I just wanted to point it out because I think it's a really interesting way. So much of the time you just see somebody kind of going, and it's like a loose sock. Spidey pulls his mask off, but the whole time it's on, it's skin tight. So why wouldn't it stretch and pull off his face? So the Chameleon lets him know he's disguised as a worker. They're transporting a nuclear weapon via train. So this is the time he's going to use his new creation to, I guess, steal it. So we get a little display of how the humanoid works. He controls it mentally from a distance. It's very, very strong. We know that. And he can see through its eyes. So there we go. This is a very nice shot here of the train. You get that sense of the train zipping by. There's almost like a little curve to the track, and we're below the track, so we're in that what's called a worm's eye view, right? We're down, laying on the ground, slightly looking up. So you see the helicopter, you see the train coming by. Really nice set. A wider shot in a very still small panel that sets up what's happening. So I like that. The humanoid comes down on a rope, I guess, or some sort of conveyance to land down on the train, and the guards start shooting at him. So this is one problem I have. You'll see here as the Hulk begins to fight him, the humanoid appears to be some sort of like almost rubbery, plasticky, silly putty. If you're familiar with that old children's toy Silly Putty, it's kind of like that. But in this first panel, as they're shooting him, they say they're shooting right through him. The bullets are like he's a sponge. They just go right through him. Well, if that's the case, then why doesn't the Hulk punch through him? Why does the Hulk keep bouncing off all the time? Why wouldn't the bullets bounce off him? So I just found that that was a discrepancy that I don't understand. It doesn't add anything to the story that bullets act one way and everything else acts a different way. Um, Banner is locked away again because Talbot is running security and he believes that Banner is a security threat, so he immediately locks him away and says, "You stay here." And Banner's like, "I didn't. What are you talking about? I didn't do it." But he gets all worked up and transforms into the Hulk in spite of himself. I do like this Hulk down here. Again, remember, these are super, super small pages or panels, right? This whole thing is maybe 3 inches across and 5 inches tall at most. There's a whole narration box at the top, and you've got to fit in this gigantic character and make him feel powerful. But they're able to do it. I like the crouch. I like the leg trailing off in shadow and the real big bend in the knee, so all that weight is over the knee as he's leaning forward. I like the big, thick, short nose and the large upper lip. Overall, this is probably, honestly, one of the better Hulk drawings throughout the whole issue. And again, this comes back to my, when you don't have the real estate to work in larger panels and your drawings have to be really small, it's hard to be sometimes consistent with things like facial features and stuff like that. So that's one of the things that does hurt this issue a lot, is there just isn't enough space to really draw the Hulk and draw the Hulk well. But this is one of the better panels, I think, of the comic. The Hulk, of course, does what he does, which is breaks out, because nobody puts the Hulk in a box. Nobody puts the Hulk in a corner. And the leader is remotely controlling his character, his humanoid here, to release the car with all the soldiers. And then he's going to steal the device. But, of course, the Hulk leaps after him. So here's another piece of this. Again, it goes back and forth. Sometimes the Hulk knows what Banner knows. Sometimes he doesn't. And I think throughout this, he understands what this nuclear device is and how dangerous it is. And I don't like that. There's no other than, so the Hulk, he's locked in a room. He gets mad that he's locked in a room. He breaks out. I would think his first thing would be like, either he's going to jump away or he's going to beat up all the guards, the military guards. But for some reason, he decides instead, because again, I guess he understands or remembers what's going on and knows about this device, so he has to protect this nuclear device at all costs, even though, right, it doesn't make sense. The Hulk's motivation, what's the motivation? So the Hulk leaps over. Again, this is actually a really nice small panel here. Sometimes these little, so I was just complaining about little drawings. You can't get all those details. There are very few details here. When we get in there, you'll notice the face. Like, I'm really zoomed in. I'm zoomed in at, how much are we zoomed in at? 600%, so that you can see this. And you can see what the face looks like. And it's still small. It's sort of just a little black circles for where the eyes are, a little square rectangle with a dark spot for the nose, an opening for the mouth, and a big square head. But it's the hair blowing back. It's the position of the arms. Again, super simple. We're not drawing every muscle like we do today. He's big and thick. The foot, again, that other leg trailing back in darkness and shadow. This is a very nice action pose. And you could take this same figure pose, blow it up, and add all the detail, all the rendering, all the ligaments and veins and muscle strain and all that kind of stuff in here if you want, and you'd have an awesome leaping Hulk picture. But this works as well in this small panel. I also like the fact that it is small here because the train is in the foreground coming near us and he's trying to catch it. So that does help really emphasize the distance that he's traveling to catch up to the train. But immediately he lands on this thing, kind of tackles this thing and bounces off. And you go, what? That's kind of weird. And the leader immediately jumps to this thing and goes, "Oh, he's green. Is he a gamma mutation like me?" So, putting I don't know, he's doing algebra equations. He's not putting two and two together. He's putting two and x together and coming up with an answer. So it's kind of a leap there, but fair enough. And now we have the Hulk punching away and trying to do what he can. But again, this thing is squishy like Play-Doh or silly putty, and he can't break it. So he's just sort of not doing anything. And then it gives him an electric shock. That's not great. That's not a great picture. I get what he's trying to do. He's supposed to show a surprised and maybe have his hair stand up because he's getting shocked by electricity, but it just kind of looks weird. It almost looks like he has some sort of, I don't know, pompadour or like a perm or something. And the eyes looking at us, but there's no reaction like in the mouth. It's all in the eyes. It's just very weird. He's just kind of like, so I thought that was pretty funny. This one where and then the humanoid throws him off the train. That's not so bad. Again, small little figure, but a nice, what you call gesture. That gesture is, actually all of these gestures are pretty cool. Like this one here, where his punch reflects back at him and he's twisted and off balance. That's pretty funky and weird, but it's a good gesture. It's the bones. It's just a gesture drawing is just the essence of the movement of a figure as a drawing. So it's what shape do the arms take in relation to the spine, in relation to the hips and legs. And you can kind of do it like a little wireframe figure to get your gestures and then fill in all the musculature and everything around it. But these are good gesture drawings. They really are. Until we get down to the bottom, and I'm going to touch on this for like 2 seconds, and then we're literally going to skip over this because this is one of the crazier things I think I've ever seen in a comic. And I just you go, I can't explain this. The Hulk is thrown off the end of the train. So first of all, some of this doesn't make any sense. This is the end of the train. The other cars have been released, right? So if he throws him off the end of the train, the opposite direction of where the train is coming, why is there train cars underneath him? There are no other train cars. So the Hulk should be falling towards the ground as the train is zipping away. There should be no train here. Here's what they say. Between his muscles and the wind, he somehow gets his body in a position to flip over the tunnel and land on the train. So he takes his backwards momentum, turns it into forward momentum that exceeds or matches that of the train. I'm not the leader. I don't have a giant egg brain. I know that is not how physics works. I don't care how many muscles you have. That is not how physics works. So we're just going to move on. We're not going to talk about it. We're going to move on. The art is getting a little rougher as we go. And I don't know if that's because, again, sometimes is it that we're getting towards the end of the book and we're dealing with deadlines. It is important to note, as confirmed by Nick Caputo, great friend of the channel and incredible historian. If there's anybody who knows anything and everything about Steve Ditko and his career, it's Nick. So Nick has told me, and he said it in comments, you can see him below, or in other videos as well, Steve Ditko is working on 3 things at the same time. He's working on this, he's working on Amazing Spider-Man, and he's also working on Doctor Strange. And plus, I'm sure, covers here and there, or design work here and there. There just wasn't a massive bullpen of artists the way we think of maybe today. So, a few people had to do a lot of work. And the reality is sometimes you got to go fast. And these deadlines do not miss. If you have a deadline, you have X number of days to get this done. So it's a little rougher here. There are figures that I don't like as much. They're just sort of messy. So this is a great example. We see the leader sees the Hulk coming at the humanoid as he's landed back on the train, right? So look at this face. Not great. Hair's kind of all over the place. It's not as consistent. Yes, the nose is a little shorter. Let's compare this face to the one that we saw previously. The one that I really liked. Let's compare it to this one. So this one to me is a better Hulk face. Subtle. There's, not a ton of differences. But, I mean, right? You see the difference? Same artists, but that other face is just better. Then we get over here. This one is not good. The curl, the little curl of the hair and stuff, I don't understand what's happening there. The nose is now too long. The face isn't wide enough. It just isn't consistent. This shading, the hatching on the shading is, again, weird and inconsistent. You see a lot of it on this image as well. At smaller sizes. So I get what you're trying to do. So the reason we use hatch marks like that to show shading is it's supposed to be a fade, a way to show a delineation between a black shadow and a lit area, right? So what I mean by that is underneath the Hulk's arm is black. This part, the front of his shoulder, if the light is coming down from the top, isn't going to get as much light, but it's not solid black either. It's going to get a little because it's a curved surface. So as it curves around, it's going to pick up a little bit of light. So you use this hatching. That's fine. However, if the light, again, is coming down from the top, you don't need all these lines on this bicep because there's no shadow there. This would be just lit up. It's fine. These hatch marks are supposed to be, I guess, delineating muscles, but again, doesn't make sense. Why would they just be sort of layered all over the place? And again, when you have a small figure, this line here in this panel, which is a much bigger figure, is the same size line as on this smaller figure. So they look much bigger and it comes across as sort of hairy looking. You'd be better off just putting a couple just small black shadows or just leaving the shadows off on a small figure like that. When you try to hatch it like that on a small figure, it's not going to work. Now, like here on this cheek, this is the way you use it. The light is coming down. He's got a very, a good ball, I guess, if you will, a real pronounced squishy cheek. Maybe because he's always going like this, so his cheeks squish up. So underneath that cheek is going to be a shadow, and then it's going to fade out. And that's exactly what the hatching does. This is how you do it to help show the roundness of that form on a two-dimensional page. That is how you use it. This is not how you use it. This doesn't do anything for us. Again, maybe that's what he's trying to do, is show that delineation, like it's rounded, but it doesn't work because the figure's too small, because the panel's too small. So you're better off just leaving it alone. Let's see here. What else have we got? Talked about that. Hairy shading. Yep. Okay. So the Hulk, the device is, this is crazy. So the nuclear device has been rocked loose from its moorings by their fight. So the Hulk leaps over. Now, I guess in a way he's worried. he's managed to somehow defeat the humanoid by knocking him off the train. We see here. Oh, he's a lifeless non-entity. Okay, so it's stopped. So now he's got to stop this thing. If they stop fighting, it should stay there. Instead, he jumps across, tackles, and shoves this giant nuclear device off into the soft sand next to the train. You're telling me the impact of him hitting it and knocking it off is worse than if it just fell off itself? I'm confused. What did the Hulk accomplish by this? Other than this great strain of doing it transforms him back into Dr. Banner. So again, remember, at this point, he's not transforming when he calms down the way we think. He transforms when he gets excited or exerts himself, either as Banner or the Hulk. So if he exerts himself too much as the Hulk, he turns back into Banner. If he exerts himself as Banner, he turns into the Hulk. Afterwards, the military comes looking for the device. And who do they find there? But ironically, a shirtless, purple ripped pants Banner. And nobody says anything. This is supposed to be Talbot, Glenn Talbot. It doesn't look like Glenn Talbot. Now, how do I know it's Glenn Talbot? He's wearing the blue uniform. He's a guy with a mustache. I understand he's wearing a hat, but look at how the face is. It's very square, rectangle with this little chin at the bottom. Again, just for quick reference, let's get back to where we saw Glenn Talbot. He has a very narrow face and sort of a bigger head. So, yes, that's supposed to be him, but it doesn't look like him. And he's more upset that Dr. Banner got himself out of the car that he was locked in, the railroad car that he was locked in, while somebody was attacking the train. So why wouldn't... Again, we can suspend disbelief. It's a comic book. The stories don't have to make sense. And I'm not here... Most of the time, what I try to focus on is the artwork. Unless the story element is so egregious that I just can't manage it. And I've got to discuss it. But for me, realistically, I feel like we got to touch on this a little. So the point here is that why wouldn't Banner say, hey, when the Hulk attacked, I leapt off the train for my own safety. I was afraid for my safety. And then I was able to find the device. Let's not even get into the fact that nobody's talking about why he has no shirt and ripped up pants. We're not even going to talk about that. It happened. My clothes got all ripped up when I fell off, when I jumped off the train. But here, I found the device, this nuclear weapon. But no, instead he's going to be arrested for what? Craziness. So there we go. So now the leader has learned of the Hulk and he wants to learn more. So we have this kind of mirror image. It could have been done visually a little stronger. Maybe we could have had something in the foreground more like test tubes or cables or something that would have mimicked the bars that Bruce is behind. And it would have been nice to have them both sitting actually facing each other as opposed to the leader turned 3/4, right? A nice little mirror image of the two figures I think would have worked really well. I do like this. Instead of being inside of the cell, we're on the outside. It really feels like he's enclosed and captured again. How many times has this happened now? 2, 3 behind the bars. So I do like the imagery. It's just how many times is he going to be arrested for something and then they let him go because there's no proof of anything. So anyway, that's the story. So now we'll see what happens. The leader is got his sights on the Hulk, and now Bruce is again in more trouble. How can he get loose without admitting he's the Hulk? And there's the comic. So that's it. We're going to head over to the desk and we're going to wrap things up. So that's Tales to Astonish 63. When I first went through it, I was like, well, it's got the leader, which is a great, first appearance. That's pretty cool. The leader becomes a very big Hulk villain, especially in like the early 80s, 90s, or late 80s, early 90s. Kind of, there's a big run where the leader really plays a big role. But he's a classic Hulk villain. We've got a fight. Most of the issue, a lot of it is fighting. The humanoid creature or construction or whatever you want to call it is kind of a neat idea. I'd like to see more about that. It reminds me of other sort of android characters that Silver Age villains made. You see a lot of those. So cool idea there. So originally I was like, well, I'm gonna rate this a 6 out of 10. But after going through it, there's things like the physics breaking jump over the train tunnel, the inconsistencies with the drawing, the shading, the rendering style. Again, it is inconsistent. It changes sometimes from panel to panel. Sometimes it's used right, sometimes it's used wrong. Downgrades this to a 5 out of 10. I'd like to. There's things. It would be very easy. Who knows? Maybe someday I'll do it. I'll sit down. It's 13 pages. I'll sit down and I'll restructure it and I'll show you maybe what I would have done different. Who knows? There's a lot of information you got to get through in 13 pages. So you got to use some panels. But anyway, that's my thoughts. And as I always say, your mileage may vary. So if you feel differently about this issue, let me know in the comments. I do check out all the comments, so please feel free to leave those for me. I really appreciate it. And as always, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You can win free artwork just by hitting that subscribe button when we get to 1,000 subscribers. So thanks so much for joining me. Thank you for being part of this YouTube community that we're building here. Keep your eyes open for even more videos coming up soon, but I'll definitely see you here next week for more Incredible Hulk. Thanks.